All right, so I've got a pretty interesting series going on here. It is basically titled The Time Blank Happened. We had one on Steven Crowder getting mauled by a college kid named Yusuf and running away from him. Steven Crowder getting, discombobulated by Potholer54. Now, today we're going to be doing a little bit of a flashback that a lot of you guys know about. However, there are certainly some of you guys who don't know about this because Kyle Kulinski had referenced Razorfist in his video called like Fox News, Dr. Pummel's Fox News host into submission on Medicare for All. I think the guy's name was Dr. Gaffney. He did like just to demolish them on Fox News. Like he went like 1v6 and just mauled them all. And also he had the term razor fisted. You know how like ether became a verb after Nas Ether Jay-Z? Like razor fisted is low key a verb. So, and some people didn't get it. So we're going to be doing a flashback today, which is going to be really interesting. So I have a couple of clips here, and this is the first time we ever saw Kyle Kulinski from Secular Talk debate someone, and he went to town on a dude named Razorfist. That's not a joke name. We didn't make that up. His name is literally Razorfist. That's actually I'm surprised it's not Razorfish. It's Razorfist. And the guy, he looks indistinguishable from Styx Hexenhammer. So they're two different people, guys, because I know anytime I do a video on Styx, people are like, is that the guy Kyle destroyed? No. That's Styx Hexenhammer. This is Razorfist. This guy wears gloves and sunglasses indoors. He looks very odd. But anyways, so this first clip we're going to be looking at here, it's actually going to be on the topic of healthcare. And go ahead and check this out. We're going to come back and talk about it.
Here's the great irony. You argue for the social contract and argue that when the government saves someone's life, then that's a laudable experience. But by the same token, when someone dies due to inadequate health care from socialized medicine, which does happen in socialized medicine countries, which very nearly happens to people in countries with flat-out single-payer healthcare systems, where they wind up with healthcare complications due to exorbitant wait times over healthcare. It's funny how that social contract simply erodes and only works one way.
Well, that what you just said is bullshit. That's not true.
Moreover, I would argue further. I'm sorry. What isn't true?
What you said is not true. So first of all, every single country, like rationing is this big thing that people on the right like to point to. Oh my God, rationing healthcare and single payer systems. Every single country rations care. The question is, how do you ration it and how do you prioritize it? In the US, we do what's called a wallet biopsy. So the richer you are, the more likely you are to get good health care. In other countries, in single payer countries, they ration based on need. Whoever needs the care gets the care. Wait for elective procedures. So yes, if you want a fin surgery or you want something that's elective, you might have to wait a little bit. And you know what? That's totally fine because the person who needs a gallbladder surgery right now is going to get that gallbladder surgery. And it's always hilarious to me when I listen to people like you talk about single-payer healthcare, and then you go and talk to somebody who lives in a single-payer system. It's night and day. They tell you, no, I love our system, and we think what you do is crazy. And by the way, while we're at it, allow me to say that 45,000 people die every year in the U.S. Because they don't have access to basic health care. That number in Canada and Norway and Denmark and Iceland and Sweden is zero.
Yeah, and that's invariably what you'll fall back on. But more people have access.
Because it's true. That's why I fall back on it, because it's accurate.
What
I'm saying is true.
Providing access is not the same thing as providing care. If you increase the number of people who have access to character, unless you have a magic Harry Potter wand to increase the number of doctors and nurses overnight in a system that no longer places ample incentives on actually becoming a doctor, well, congrats. All you did was give the entire nation access to interminable wait times. I mean, does it broaden coverage?
The people in
Sure.
Denmark disagree. The people in Canada disagree. The people in Norway disagree. Apparently, they have that magic Harry Potter wand because they're making it work right now, and our system is not working.
Which is actually not factual, because in 2013 alone in Canada, across all 12 major medical disciplines, average wait times swelled like an improperly diagnosed neck tumor from nearly 10 weeks to 18 and a half weeks. And I mentioned the improperly...
What did I just tell you? The wait times are for elective procedures. They're not for necessary procedures that you have to have right now.
And here's why I mentioned the improperly diagnosed neck tumor. Because I can use an example that's actually very public and was very public on our format, YouTube. Prominent philosophy YouTuber Stefan Molyneux had a tumor on his neck.
Oh, yes, philosophy YouTuber, the very serious thinker Stefan Molyneux. Please continue.
That's so very relevant to this discussion.
You're the one that mentioned him.
They tell him, don't worry, it's benign. Wait 3 more months. Dude's sitting here with a shot put in his jaw. They're playing the smooth jazz music for him over the phone and asking him to please stand by for a quarter of a goddamn year. 10 months pass. He finally gets airfare to the States and gets it lanced off by one of our inferior American doctors, who, by the way, takes one look at it, says benign, and puts him on chemo treatments he should have been taking in Canada for the last year. Socialized medicine quite nearly killed the dude.
Okay, so ready? That's one example. You ready for my example? There's somebody named Bob, somebody named Steve, somebody named Jeff, somebody named Chris, somebody named Barbara, somebody named Susan. And this is a Harvard study I'm quoting from. You ready? Quote, 45,000 people die every year from lack of health coverage. And furthermore, if you want to talk about...
It's called the Veterans Administration.
Wait. Do you want to talk about specific cases? Let's talk about specific cases. There was a woman... This is under our private health insurance system. You know how people love to say under Obamacare there are death panels? Guess what? They're right. There are death panels. They're called private insurance companies. Because what happens is they try to find any way possible to wiggle out of paying for your care. Because if you have a private health insurance system, you want to maximize profit as much as possible. That's the way it works. You're for profit. So, hey, how do we make more money? Deny as much care as possible. So there was a woman who had skin cancer. And her insurance company said, we're not going to pay out on your claim. She's like, why? This doesn't make any sense. They said, well, we looked back into your past and we found that you had acne. She's like, what? That doesn't make any sense. So you're not going to pay for my skin treatment because I had acne? They go, well, you say it's acne. We say it was cancerous skin lesions and you had a pre-existing condition. So now we're not going to pay out. And guess what? She died. So you want to sit here and shoot anecdotes all day? We could shoot anecdotes all day. But honestly, I don't give a anecdotes because anecdotes are anecdotes for a reason. They ignore the macro picture. And the macro picture is from the Harvard study, not Kyle speaking here, the Harvard study, quote, 45,000 people die every year from lack of health coverage in the U.S. That does not exist in Canada or Norway or Sweden, no matter how many shitty little stories you come up with to try to pretend like single-payer systems are monstrous when they're actually... objectively.
I don't have to pretend they are because we already have.
All right, so a very important point that I want to make here about this whole healthcare, because this is a relatively early issue. We're actually going to be going in chronological order of these specific points, these 3 points that we're going to 3 clips we're going to be going over. But this is an example of what basically ended up going on throughout the whole debate. So Kyle Kulinski had facts. He literally brought meta-analysis, which is you take up all the peer-reviewed papers and all the analysis and you combine them all together and see what the result is. He brought studies from Harvard and he brought a bunch of different facts, right? And then Razorfist came with a bunch of anecdotes. So you heard there about him bringing up Stefan Molyneux, right? And you bring up this anecdote to try to play up feelings. And I know that that's the way emotion works. But the problem is that for every one Stefan Molyneux that you have, and by the way, Stefan Molyneux is a really crazy character, so I don't even know if we can really trust the guy. The guy has advocated defooing, which is like you just like shun away your friends for the smallest thing or whatever. He's also somebody who's totally gone down the loony pipeline at this point. So I even question the validity of Stefan Molyneux's whole situation. But let's even concede, right? For every one of those anecdotes that exist, there's like a trillion anecdotes that you'll see, and there'll probably be ones in this comment section, and possibly, you know, of people who are talking about the Canadian healthcare system or any other UK or single-payer healthcare system being successful, and talking about their stories of how it worked really well. So the anecdotes are garbage. Talk about, give us data, give us numbers, give us studies. So Kyle Kulinski brings it up. He goes, hey man, a Harvard study showed that 45,000 Americans die every single year due to a lack of health insurance. What's Razorfist's answer? Well, Stefan Molyneux had this problem in Canada, and so that's why we shouldn't have single-payer healthcare. But he just gave you a study, numbers, and facts, and you're hitting back with an anecdote. And so that was this whole thing. He doesn't bring up like anything. He didn't come prepared with anything, but it's not even necessarily coming with like papers and notes. You should have specific facts, known in your head. You shouldn't be immediately pivoting to anecdotes for everything. You should have statistics to back up your points. So, like, I don't need to have the paper of the Harvard study out. I know that 45K Americans die every single year because they lack basic access to health insurance. And it didn't seem like Razorfist had any of those, not a single one of those. So it was obviously, super ridiculous. And then the rationing BS point that they make that, there's somehow this rationing that goes on. And as Kyle pointed out, and this is a widely debunked thing, in the United States, we just ration based on your wallet size. So, which one is really better. And also, in countries like Canada, as they said, you prioritize, non-elective procedures. So in other words, you go into the ER, you need this surgery, that's prioritized over someone trying to get a tit job. You know what I mean? So, the priorities seem to be pretty straight there. Okay, we all know these other countries are far better than us in virtually every ranking possible. They are more cost efficient as well as having better outcomes. Our outcomes stink big time. Our outcomes are terrible. And so he obviously debunked the rationing talking point, as you guys saw there. And then the anecdote thing, bringing up Stefan Molyneux, come on now, dude. Is that really going to be your point to put in favor? And Kyle made the point where he's like, oh, for that anecdote that you bring up, I've got, he named a bunch of random names because the point he's trying to get across is for every anecdote you provide me, there's tons more. So stop doing anecdotes. It reminds me of Lauren Southern's debate with Destiny, where Lauren Southern said that data was plural of anecdote. So, meaning that basically you have anecdotal evidence and you just extrapolate that to its plural. That's data. So I guess I think if you logically follow that, if you take if you have 10 people you look at and then you come to a conclusion, then all of them, if 10 out of 10 come with the same conclusion with those 10 people, then if data is the plural of anecdote, then that would mean that all of the people would then have that same, characteristic, or experience, So anyways, that's for the healthcare clip. Now, next clip we're going to be looking at here is an interesting debate that ended up coming up because I guess Razorfist is a Trump supporter. And they're going to debate whether or not is Trump really different from the neocons in terms of social policy and just that kind of whole jazz. Check this out.
One of the most, and I think probably the most prominent politician to come out the earliest for both gay marriage and gays in the military was actually Republican. It was Barry Goldwater, Mr. Conservative. So it's not completely out of step with the Republican platform. It's just out of step with what the neocon platform became, the Reaganites, the Pat Robertson Brigade, and so forth.
Would you deny that that's the more vehement strain in the party today?
I think that's definitely changed with Trump, who's, holding a rainbow flag on stage. I think there's certainly been a paradigm shift there.
But also picking Mike Pence as his VP.
I'm sorry, what?
But also picking Mike Pence as his VP, whose claim to fame before he was picked to be VP was that he signed an anti-gay bill in Indiana, which made it so that businesses are legally allowed to discriminate against gay people.
Yeah, as a conciliatory gesture to the neocon wing, and we can go on and on with that. But you understand what I mean. Like Trump himself holding rainbow flags on stage, having publicly expressed support for George Michael's wedding the same year that Hillary Clinton came out and said marriage is between one man and one woman. That was 2005, I believe. He's clearly not the same, cut from the same cloth as the Mike Pences and the Paul Ryans.
Well, I agree with that, but I don't think he has much of an ideology to begin with. I think he's totally unmoored and totally vapid, but that's a separate conversation. My point is the majority of elected Republicans are not Rand Paul. They're not liberal on social issues. They're decidedly the opposite.
That's beginning to change already. You just saw Jeff Flake resign.
Okay, but it's right now. I'm talking right now.
But in any political group, you're going to wind up. I mean, I severely doubt you would like to be closely identified with the John Podestas and Hillary Clintons. There's different wings of each party.
I'm loudly and aggressively on the record saying, number one, they are the dominant strain in the Democratic Party, which is why I'm trying to fucking purge it with Justice Democrats. That's point number one. But point number two is, why are you tap dancing around it? Just admit it. The majority of the Republican Party are socially conservative, backwards Neanderthals.
I wasn't tap dancing around it. I'm more than happy to admit that the neocons took over the party and that obviously triggered a massive shift in the party. However, by the same token, I just said, unlike the Democrats, there's actually a shift in the opposite direction.
Okay, but then we get into what is rhetoric versus what is reality. I would submit to you that Rand Paul is the only person who's actually left or libertarian on social issues, whereas virtually everybody else in the Republican Party, including Trump, because I don't give a fuck what Trump says. What matters to me are his policies and his actions. And he just recently signed a religious liberty executive order. So this is one of those things where, yeah, he could hold an LGBTQ flag all day long, but that doesn't mean dick at the end of the day when he's picking Mike Pence for VP and he's signing every single bill that Pat Robertson and John Hagee wants him to sign.
You'd be surprised at how many Republicans are liberal on social issues. I don't even like John McCain, and we all know his stance on civil unions and so forth because of his daughter.
Civil unions is a joke. A halfway point on an issue where there is no halfway point. Either you're for gay marriage or you're against it.
And I agree on that issue. I completely agree. Look, I'm from more of the Rand Paul wing, so you're really preaching to the choir here.
Good. Well, then we're going to get along a lot more than I thought we would.
There you go. Well, I mean, one of the reasons I wanted you two guys to...
Yeah, so as Kyle debunked there, that whole thing was total bogey, easy, total, massive bogey. So the talking point that a lot of the right-wing NPCs like to bring up is the picture of Trump holding up the LGBT flag. If you actually remember what Trump said and when he was holding up that flag, he was actually talking about protecting those people from basically, radicals abroad. So what he was doing was he was co-opting the LGBT movement in order to be like, I'm going to protect you from these people, and that's why I'm going to put the Muslim ban in place. So he never said that I'm going to uphold their rights or that I support them. He said I'm going to defend them from these, crazy people who are going to come into the country. So he was actually he never said that he was going to like defend them or be a, fighter of rights for them. And dude, look at what's borne out. Donald Trump put in the transgender ban for the military. Now, I don't know what the status on that is, what the Supreme Court is. I think the Supreme Court allowed it to go through. I don't know if the Pentagon officially did or not. I forgot. But he certainly supported it, and he's the reason why all this is going through and everything. And also, apparently, they're like trying to erase the idea of an existence of a transgender person. They're basically trying to erase the entire identity, which is absolutely insane. But there was no indication whatsoever that Donald Trump was ever socially liberal. And if you thought that he was socially liberal, either you were being, a bad faith actor, or you're just a moron. It's one of the two. Honestly, it really is. I'm sorry. It's one of the two. And Kyle Kulinski points out, like, hey, dude. He's like, hey, dude. Mike Pence is his VP. Mike Pence is a horrible person, especially when it comes to the whole LGBT area. We know that he's extremely, conservative religious views. I think there's video of him, talking, and he's against evolution. Which, like, whoa, dude, that's your vice president? Yikes, man, that's not a good look, dude. That's really not a good look. But the idea that, like, Donald Trump, and Kyle does make a certain point there that, like, Donald Trump doesn't really have an ideology when it comes to that stuff, but the idea that he was even leaning in that direction of socially liberal is total bogus, total bogey. And also, by the way, I think it was, I forgot if it was the Solicitor General who was helping the case in the Supreme Court case with the whole cake thing or not, but they were basically, on the side of the cake baker, which basically was like, if you are to, and the case ended up being really weird because there were a lot of different caveats that existed, and they didn't really come to any conclusions, although they ended up siding with the cake baker. Obviously, they're basically, defending, literally in court, the discrimination of gay people. So, if you bake custom cakes for straight people and you don't do it for gay people, it's legal, totally fine. So, really socially liberal policy, if you do ask me, you know what I'm saying? And there was never any indication that Donald Trump was going to be socially liberal, not even in the slightest, not at all. And I know that Styx had made a video talking about Donald Trump where there was this total thing that they did. And I think Kyle did a video about this where they were trying to say that they're like trying to promote the rights of LGBT abroad. And they were trying, but what they were trying to do really is trying to target Iran by falsely doing that, by trying to, mask it and be really fake. And someone asked Donald Trump about it on video. He's like, well, I don't know about that. And so Styx was like all rating, all happy. Not Razorfist, Styx. I know it's a little bit off topic, but they're very similar, certainly. So Kyle went in on that one, certainly. And, something else. We got to establish trends for this debate because that's what we do. We analyze this stuff, right? What did Razorfist do earlier? He was doing anecdotes. What else did he do all the way throughout this debate? And it didn't work because Kyle's not a partisan hack. What Kyle did was, what Razorfist was continuously doing, the H.A. Goodman tactic. Hillary, DNC, Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton, over and over and over again. So he tries to bring them up there too, and like over and over and over again. It's like, no one is defending Hillary Clinton, dude. Kyle Kulinski hates Hillary Clinton. We all hate Hillary Clinton. So, and Kyle even says it there. He's like, dude, if you think you're going to get me to defend Hillary Clinton, you're a moron, because I'm not going to, because I don't like Hillary Clinton, and you're purposely trying to pigeonhole me to try to, do this like hacky move. So he kept doing that over and over and over again. He kept trying to go to Hillary Clinton. No one cares about Hillary. This is about Donald Trump. We're talking about Donald Trump here, Donald J. Trump, okay, and about him. We're not talking about Hillary Clinton or anything like that. Stop. Why are you bringing that? Obviously, Hillary Clinton was massively flawed. She sucked terribly, and we hated her. So I don't know why you keep bringing that up. It's obvious whataboutism to try to defend himself. Now, for this last clip we're going to look at here, it's going to be the question of, it's a hilarious question, as if this is even debatable, seriously. It's whether or not Trump is an insider and part of the establishment. Check it out.
But you're talking about Goldman Sachs lackey. The guy ran a burger restaurant. Like, it's absolutely absurd.
And he was the head of One West Bank and worked for Goldman Sachs, so he's a Wall Street insider, and he's doing their bidding.
And anyone who is corporate could be described as a Wall Street insider. This is the problem.
Good to know you're defending Goldman.
The idea that you're not. I'm sorry. What?
Keep defending Goldman Sachs. This is fun.
No.
Really?
What I'm saying is this guy, at the end of the day, has to put together an administration. Goldman
Sachs insiders.
I'm sorry?
I said of Goldman Sachs insiders, apparently, after he spent the whole campaign trail going after Hillary Clinton for her connection to Goldman Sachs and Wall Street. And by the way, he was right about that. But then he turns around and does the same thing, and it's called hypocrisy, and it's called him being an establishment.
No, it's called putting together your administration, and unfortunately having.
Would you say that if Hillary did that?
Pieces.
If Hillary,
I've talked about. No, look, I recorded an entire video about how Trump's cabinet could go either way. And as you've seen with the large turnover, there's some clear teething issues in appointing the correct names and faces to the correct positions. And I agree. Like, a lot of these faces and names are as soon as I heard Sessions, I was not pleased at all. As soon as I heard, I'm trying to think of some of the other names, but Mnuchin, I wasn't over the moon about, actually, who I just mentioned to you, and whose name I also cannot pronounce properly. But, there's a lot of people within his administration that I'm not over the moon about, and fortunately, a lot of them appear to be as of now. So I'm not sure why you would even necessarily mention that. You have to understand, like, at the beginning, he had people from he had Romney advising him on who was going to be in his cabinet and so forth. This was clearly a lot of his cabinet, unfortunately, in the beginning were conciliatory picks for the neocons. Because at the end of the day, he was trying to unite his party. He's made this mistake before, by the way, in the primary, when he, instead of standing his ground and standing in opposition to Rand Paul and John McCain, he gave kind of a last-minute endorsement so that he could get their endorsement in kind, and then they just wound up sticking the knife in anyway. He's been rife with this. Look, this is a non-politician. He went from civilian, albeit a popular one, to president of the United States in less than a year. He's not stupid, but he's also not a politician. And there's clearly going to be teething issues, and there clearly have been with his cabinet in general. But yeah, I don't understand why you would even Goldman Sachs insiders. Swing a dead cat and don't hit a Goldman Sachs insider in Washington, D.C.
Oh,
like, I dare you.
Please. You don't even believe that.
No, much less on the Republican side.
That's so silly to say that. Like, obviously, he picked Goldman Sachs insiders for a reason because
he's fired them.
Into the he didn't fire Mnuchin and Cohen. I don't know why you keep saying that. They're still in the administration.
Yes, but several others have been. And several other Goldman Sachs
insiders. We're talking about Mnuchin and Cohen. I don't give a f. He fired Bob, who did something else. I'm talking about Mnuchin and Cohen, Goldman Sachs lackeys who, yes, are doing the bidding of Goldman Sachs. I just told you they're working on privatizing our infrastructure and letting Goldman Sachs be the beneficiary. And it's not a coincidence that Gary Cohn took a gigantic over $200 million exit bonus, and then now he's doing that.
Hold on. What is privatizing our infrastructure? Name a road that wasn't built by a private company with government grants.
Have you heard of the New Deal?
The railroad system. Have you heard of the train? I mean,
wait. Are you denying that we have public roads that can be privatized? Are you denying that?
No,
we have public roads
what I just said is private companies are contracted by the government to do these things, correct?
But they don't own them. They don't own them.
That isn't material. That is
material because Goldman is going to own them. That's the point. That's what they're working on right now.
Okay. So you're saying Goldman Sachs will own the roads?
No. Not all of the roads. Don't be a pithy idiot. You know what I'm saying. Certain roads, yes, they're trying to sell off parts of the infrastructure and have Goldman own them. And that is happening because Gary Cohn took a tremendous exit bonus, and now he's one of Trump's top officials. And Trump is doing the bidding of the establishment just like he said he wouldn't do. So that's why this is all relevant. It's not, oh, wow, look at poor Trump. It's hard to pick the right people. No, it's Trump is actively trying to do the bidding of the establishment because he's their bitch. He is an insider. He's not an outsider. He's an insider. He is Hillary Clinton.
No, he's such an insider that he was out-donated by Hillary. What, 700 million was the final count?
No. You're not going to get me to defend Hillary, sweetheart. You're not going to get me to defend Hillary. But
what I'm saying is,
you're trying to deflect from the problems with Trump.
No. What I'm saying is, if he was in fact an insider.
Again, I laughed at the idea of this even being a debatable issue. Seriously, we're gonna debate the issue as to whether or not Donald J. Trump is an insider. When he became president, who did he appoint to his cabinet? Gary Cohn and Steve Mnuchin. Okay. I believe they were both very big, recipients of taxpayer bailout money after the crash. So, and they were obviously Wall Street goons. And Steve Mnuchin actually is one of the guys who leads into Kamala Harris, because remember, Kamala Harris got a donation from him, and he was kicking out people illegally from their homes after the crisis, where people don't have money to get their homes. He was illegally kicking them out of their homes. But anyway, so he appointed them to his cabinet. And you think there's a debate as to whether or not this man, Donald J. Trump, is an insider or part of the establishment? He's done nothing, fiscally speaking, to in any way, shape, or form be like anti-establishment. All he's done is be fully establishment. So like his tax cut, for example, and that was heavily influenced by both Steve Mnuchin and Gary Cohn. I can't recall exactly if it was Steve Mnuchin or Gary Cohn. I want to say it was Steve Mnuchin, who just outright said that the tax bill and the benefits of the tax bill are going to mostly go to the rich. But they were mostly behind writing that and coming up with ideas and telling Donald Trump about it. So of course Donald Trump is an insider. And Kyle brought up examples of donors to his campaign, as well as he brought up that Donald Trump he has a lot of debt. Okay, a lot of debt to Wall Street. Okay, I think the only bank that would give him money is Deutsche Bank, if I'm not mistaken. So he actually owed them a lot of money, and so yeah, there is possibility that they're hanging that over his head, and they're ending up. There was actually an obvious one. I remember that there were penalties that were supposed to come on Deutsche Bank, I believe it was, one of the banks, I forgot, and he pushed it back. He was like, "Oh no, we're gonna push that back." I actually forgot exactly which one it is, but comment it below specifically the details about that, because that was like damn near a quid pro quo. It's like, wow, okay, you owe a ton of debt to this bank and you have a lot of history of this bank, and now you're basically laxing up on the penalties that are supposed to be imposed on them. That's damn near a quid pro quo, dude. That's pretty close if you ask me. So. Obviously Donald Trump's not anti-establishment. The dude's been super establishment his entire candidacy, and he's wrecking the country. Every day I look at what Donald Trump is doing, and I'm like, wow, man, this dude is ruining our country left and right. A couple days ago, I remember reading that, a news article that was like the Trump administration is getting ready to just completely axe the ACA. Remember, they were like, oh no, you're going to get to keep your protections against discrimination based on previous conditions and pre-existing conditions. And then I read this like, oh, they're thinking about just axing the ACA. I'm like, damn, man, what is this guy doing? He's ruining the country. He's destroying the country day by day. And I'm like, oh my God, man, this guy is part of the swamp. He is the swamp. How are you not part of the swamp when your tax bill gives 83% of it to the top 1%? Tell me how that's possible. You've got, tons of debt, and then you're doing the favors of these big banks. Also, remember that I believe it was Justice Kennedy who had resigned. It was his son, I believe, Justin Kennedy, who was a banker at Deutsche Bank, if I'm not mistaken. And he actually was buddy with Trump because I guess they had the bank connection there. Remember, Deutsche was the only one that would give Trump any loans. And so, he resigned, Justice Kennedy resigns, and then someone else gets it, bro. It was I think that was Brett Kavanaugh who got put in his place. It's very interesting stuff going on, you know what I'm saying? So it's just Donald Trump is absolutely part of the establishment. He is the swamp. Draining the swamp. Yeah, fucking right, draining the swamp. I think the joke was he's draining the swamp in his mouth or something like that because he's part of the swamp. He is the swamp. Donald Trump is the swamp. So, anyways, this was a look back at one of Kyle Kulinski's debates. Maybe we'll look at a couple of the other ones as well later on. But this was certainly a moment in Kyle Kulinski history, if you will. I think that a lot of people think, and I think probably him too, although I'm not sure, I would assume so, that he's a really good debater. And so this was the first debate that Kyle Kulinski had done. And he had a really good showing and everyone was, very impressed by it. So he ended up leaving like a good mark on a lot of people. But let me know your thoughts on this debate down below. Did you know about it before? What is it like rewatching it? And if you're new to seeing the debate, let me know your thoughts on it down below.